The bishops versus knights battle is one of the most intense fights in chess, debates in chess. Who is better, the bishop or the knight? Generally, in open positions or in positions where pawns are running down the board, bishop is better. And in closed positions, knights are better. Of course, there are exceptions. So let's solve a few bishops versus knights positions and try to find the best move to win or to draw, depending on the situation. So white to play, we are trying to promote our pawn. There's only one move that wins. What is that move? White to play. If you push your pawn, then it's only a draw after knight b6. We cannot allow knight b6, knight a8, then we can't win. The king gets in and the knight stays there. So we must play bishop to e3, not allowing the knight to come to b6. And of course, if knight goes there, our a pawn just wins the game because the knight's worst enemy is the flank pawn, a pawn or the h pawn, because the knight can't go to the other side. Knight has only one side to stay on because it's the flank pawn, and if it moves, we just promote. Let's go to the next position. Here we have a closed position, and we know in closed positions the knight is better than the bishop. So here, what should be our first move? How do we start? How do we show that we are winning? Of course, knight c4 attacks the two pawns. d6 is defended, but we're attacking d6. We're forcing black to play bishop c7, the only move. Now, how do we continue the play? How can we get a good position? We just use our knight properly. King can't get in. The knight has great squares. Which are the squares? d5 is one square, f5 is one square. So we just, if you put your knight in good squares, they can do magic. So we play knight to e3, threatening knight d5 fork. So black has to move the bishop or the king. So black moves the bishop. Now do we play knight d5? So in chess, sometimes the best square that's obviously the best square is not always the best square. Here d5 is the center square, great. Knight is perfect there, but that doesn't win. It just stays perfectly there. So what is looking perfect may not be always perfect. The correct move is knight f5, winning a pawn. We're attacking two pawns and we're getting a pawn. So after this, they have to say goodbye to one of the pawns, and then we keep chipping away at the pawns. We'll have the advantage. Let's go to the next position. What do we do here? This is one of the most exciting positions you will see today, maybe. Let's see. White to play and win. What are we going to do here? You can pause the video and think for a little bit because it's a very interesting position. I suggest that you actually pause and think. For those who are not that patient, want to get on with it, let's move on. So basically, there is a very nice pin, right? And it's sort of permanent pin because the king can't get out of the pin. In chess, very rarely do we get these situations of permanent pins where the other player can't get out of it. So how do we get him into full paralysis? We play rook takes rook, and now this pin is permanent. So we have to basically make him run out of pawn moves. Then the king will have to move and we'll get the knight. So how do we make him run out of pawn moves? Let's start with the waiting move, king g2. He'll have to push a pawn. We just go back. Now he pushes another pawn, we just go to c3. He pushes one more pawn, we play another waiting bishop a1. They push the pawn, we take it, and then they push the pawn, we take it. And after the pawns are gone, black will have to move the king, we pick up the knight, and we win. So basically, black would be in Zugzwang, where he's out of good moves because of this pin, and that's how we win. Okay, let's move on. Here we have a case of bishop knight versus bishop knight. Whose pieces are more active? Black to play. What shall we do? There is a winning move here because our pieces are slightly more active. This bishop is totally buried. It's a bad bishop. You see here, the white pawns are all on light squares, and this bishop is buried behind them. If this was a dark squared bishop, then it's a different story. Our bishop is a good bishop. You see, because look at these pawns. They're all on dark squares, and our bishop is on a light square. So it's a good bishop. These pawns not really don't really matter because this is where the bishop would be active. So that is why we have the advantage. Now, how do we convert this? Do we go knight d4? Nah, that is just exchanging too much. We won't have much after that. We play bishop b5, threatening knight d4, so he moved out of the pin. Right? Now, can you find the win? This is where we have to be good at basic tactics. Just doing a lot of puzzle rush and puzzles will help you find these moves easily. This bishop takes knight, a fork. Our knight wins the bishop with a fork. All right, let's move on. What do we do here? Black to play. We have the case of a bad bishop over here, right? So how do we make it a good bishop? Because our pawns are in dark square, this guy is buried behind. Can we make it a good bishop somehow? Yeah, we can just push the pawn. We can sacrifice a pawn. They can take with pawn or knight, doesn't matter. We take the pawn with check. And now we come back and defend our guy. And suddenly look at this wonderful bishop. It's no longer bad. It's sitting proudly in the center of the board and there's a pass pawn. Now we just activate the king and try to win the endgame. So if you use whichever piece you have properly, you would get an advantage if the position was already advantageous. But we have to play accordingly. So making the decision to go into a good endgame, I mean, to decide whether the endgame is good or bad, we need to think about whether the knight will be better or bishop will be better in the position that we're going to get. So hopefully this will help in making those decisions. Let's end the video here.